Carry on with season two. If there's one thing I didn't mention in the last review is when it comes to the whole teen sitcom side of the show, it's actually been slightly improved. It's not as in the last season it was pretty much a repetitive cycle with Mark running off and then Samantha wondering where he's gone and he comes back and she forgives him all of a sudden. That doesn't really happen in this season too much. I mean, Mark still runs off, but this is the advantage of having Chuck being more involved. It doesn't feel as, it's all down to him. It doesn't feel as repetitive because now Chuck can focus on some of the other side of the hero situation, which he does in when he's searching for sparks in the sixth dimension, which again uses the whole game model engine from the actual video game, which is, in my opinion, one of the most impressive scenes where Chuck actually gets transported into the video game and we see this game PlayStation style version of Chuck being chased by a Googler, and it's very impressive. It does look good for a children's television show, and yeah, and while that's all impressive, meanwhile in with Ace's little story arc with his human emotions, it's starting to get the best of him. He can't control his emotions, and it's causing him to come into conflict with his allies like Random Virus, who, as if you've been watching the show, we know that Random Virus isn't exactly the most stable person. So to have Ace just suddenly betray him, it's, well, not outright betray him, but just refuse his help. It's it's just not making things easy for him. And Kilobyte, who has officially established himself as the new villain, it shows how more strategic he is compared to Lord Fear, how he wants to, destroy Ace emotionally before destroying him physically. And he also gains a pet wasp, a mutated pet wasp he calls Fred. And the CGI on the wasp is probably the most well, the CGI overall is, like I said before, it is a lot more fluid. It doesn't feel like they have to make the CGI characters repeat certain movements in a frame. They can now be a lot more expressive, which helps with Ace's whole human emotion storyline, which leads to his first actual defeat in the series. And he goes through, which can be described as the heroic despair moment, where the hero feels like he's not good enough. And this usually happens when they get their first defeat, but they do eventually, get their confidence back. But they're not doing it straight away. The writers are actually, you know, doing this properly. You're going to get defeated once. You're not going to immediately jump back. You will go through different stages of emotion. You start feeling fear. You start feeling anger, and Ace shows these emotions. So, and that's going on with him. Meanwhile, going back to the whole Chuck saving Sparks, he does eventually save Sparks. Now she's back in the real world. Um, Meanwhile, I want to talk about the whole relationship between Kilobyte and Lord Fear. Now, I know Lord Fear was always a slightly comical bad guy, but I feel like they've kind of downgraded him slightly to make Kilobyte more intimidating, because there's a lot of things that Lord Fear says in this so far that Lord Fear has said and done that he wouldn't have he wouldn't have done in the first season, and I do kind of blame the whole way they structured series one for that, because if it weren't if it weren't for the whole 26 episode structure for season one, Lord Fear would have had more intimidating moments. Because, I mean, one thing that kind of annoys me, they're acting like Fear never had any, he was never intimidating in season one, which I think is completely wrong. I thought Lord Fear did have his moments. They might not have been much, but he did have his moments in season one. And I think it's a bit unfair that they've had to pretty much look down on Fear to make the new villain more intimidating. This is why part of me kind of wishes Lord Fear didn't really come back, because we don't like it when when the previous villains have to lose some lose intimidation just to make the new guy better. But thankfully, in the Bound to Fail episode, Lord Fear does kind of redeem himself slightly by forcing Mr. Chessbird to create a formula that actually drains Ace's power, and he even gets the Doomdragon, which is a pretty cool looking motorcycle rocket that I'm sure a lot of let's just say if the show was very popular, it would have been in a lot of hot topics, if you get what I mean. But another another thing I've got to give praise for the writers, Ashley, Mark's little cousin from season one, that could be considered one of those, characters that are just there just to appeal to little children. She actually becomes useful in one episode where she's the one who rescues Chuck from the sixth dimension. So yeah, so yeah, I think lessons have been learnt from season one, and things have been improving. And another thing I just want to point out, during the scenes where Chuck is trying to find Sparks, um, we cut to this shadowy figure overseeing everything, and them preventing Chuck from saving Sparks. Now, I'm not going to reveal who it is, because much like where Kilobyte comes from, his identity is a twist. Although, if you've really been paying attention, it should be pretty obvious by now. But yeah, this shadowy figure. I won't go too far into him because, like I said, their identity will be revealed. And if you, yeah, I will eventually talk about them some more. But yeah, so far season two has gotten better. It has definitely a lot more. It has better action scenes than season one. There's been a lot more practical action scenes. Like there's been two different chases involving vehicles, and the fight scenes have had more, let's just say, more background damage, making it seem more real. And yeah, that's all I can talk about now until we carry on.